everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. You know the score by now. All things Eagles related, wrapped up, put into a nice golden nugget and delivered to your door by Amazon Prime every single Friday and potentially some other days in the near future. What a week it has been where fundamentally not a lot has happened, which is a little bit annoying in terms of this podcast, but that doesn't mean we're not going to spam you with Eagles related content. There's a lot to get through. If you're not subscribed already, now is the time to do so. We're on YouTube, we're on iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and just about every good platform, and even, I've been told, an empty Easter egg box. Someone even told me once that they found this podcast as a cereal toy that they found in the bottom of a packet of Rice Krispies. So I don't know where you're going to find this podcast next, but it's in your best interest to subscribe. If you could leave a little 5-star review on iTunes, that would be fantastic. But we're going to start things off with the results to last week's game show. Now, if you're new to this concept of the show, every week we're going to be playing Eagles blockbusters, where essentially I give you a cryptic clue that is relating to the name of a player currently on the Eagles roster. All you have to do is decipher the name, DM me on Twitter at LiamJenkinsPSN, or email me phillysportsnetwork@gmail.com. I'll select a random name from the winners and get them a t-shirt within the following week. So the first round went underway yesterday. You can play along every single week. It's free to enter. And we do have a winner. So there were 3 correct entries overall. And there were a lot of wrong ones. But it's the thought that counts. And I can't wait to see where this goes. So, just to recap, if you were playing along at home and you can remember, the first ever cryptic clue in Eagles Rockbusters was, we're gonna cause trouble, so we're gonna map a riot. That name was Matt Pryor. We're gonna map a riot, Matt Pryor. See? That's what we're looking for. The second one was, Antony loves the spirit of the radio. That was Anthony Rush. Anthony, Spirit of the Radio, an absolute classic by the rock band Rush. And the third one was, this young Brit wants to build a castle. LJ4. Now someone took that, I'm not even kidding, someone took this young Brit wants to build a castle and said Cody Kessler. And I don't understand what that means. But this young Brit, LJ, wants to build a castle for. That's nice and simple. I spanned the wheel, I selected from a pool of 3, and the winner was Mr. Will Roberts. He's been a long time listener of this show. So Will, send me an email with your preferred shirt size and your address, and I'll get a shirt sent out to you next week. How does that sound? For those of you going, Liam, I totally skipped past that part of the show because you were boring. Well, now's your time to win. We're going to start this week's Eagles Blockbusters with these 3 clues. Question 1. When will my child get in the car? When will my child get in the car? That's part 1. Write it down, rewind it, do whatever you got to do. Number 2. Excuse me, I'm looking for a town in England called Barnet. Can you direct me? Excuse me, I'm looking for a town in England called Barnet. Can you direct me? And thirdly, oi, your Dan hit someone in a club last night. How hard? Dunno, you'll have to ask him. Oi, your Dan hit someone in a club last night. How hard? I dunno, you'll have to ask him. Send me your best guesses to phillysportsnetwork@gmail.com or at Liam Jenkins PSN on Twitter. But don't do it publicly, don't comment on the YouTube video, because then everyone else is going to see, which reduces your chance of winning the t-shirt. So that's not good. If you're on YouTube, don't do that, because everyone's going to see it and they're going to steal your thunder. And we all know that Cody Kessler, spoiler, it's not Cody Kessler, alright? That's as far as we're going to get. But, again, just a big thank you to all of the support on this podcast. It has been really cool seeing it grow over the last couple of years. I won't get too soppy, but we are going to start off with an angle that I noticed recently, and that is about a certain Eagle and how I think he relates to a Game of Thrones character. Now, I'm going to start with the analogy, see if you can pick it up along the way. Game of Thrones was a bit of a bad ending, wasn't it? Because there was all this hype, and out of nowhere at the very end, when if you haven't watched Game of Thrones yet, skip to around the 7-minute mark because I'm going to spoil it, okay? This is your pre-warning. I'm going to play a pre-warning sound. Look, that's your warning. Alright, you've got to get out now. Game of Thrones spoiler. We're going now. When Jon killed Daenerys, Jon is then put into this little prison cell, and everyone's like, who's going to be the king of Westeros? What happens now? Who's going to rule the Seven Kingdoms? And you've got all of these lords and ladies around that have been drawn in from every corner of the land. Some of them have never made an appearance in the show. Like that random I can never remember the name. Prince of Dawn, he was there. Never seen him before. He just showed up. He's going to rule, apparently. You had Edmure. He showed up after failing to miss an arrow in like season 2. He's about. All the Stark people are there. You've got that the Ironborn lady that got a bit frisky, and then, you know, Theon just bailed on her at the end. That happened. She's there. Loads of people are there. All right. They all want the throne. They're all like, oh, I can do it. I can do it. It's like Lord of the Rings. All right. It's like the council. Even Grey Worm's there. Side note: did you know Grey Worm's a rapper? If you search Rally Richie on YouTube, Grey Worm is a rapper, an actual rapper as well as an actor. There you go. There's some Game of Thrones knowledge. But anyway, of all of these people, and I think who's going to be the biggest beneficiary of Jon killing Daenerys? Who is going to rule the Iron Throne? And then it's little Bran Stark. And everyone's like, what? Why? Why Bran? And then 2 weeks ago, Bran was like, oh, I don't want to rule. I'm not Bran anymore. I am the three-eyed raven. And then he just somehow comes to, King's Landing. And they're like, oh, Bran, do you want to be the king of the Westeros lands? And he's like, where else would I be here? Like an absolute gangster. So Bran was the most unpredictably beneficiary of Game of Thrones. Without a shadow of a doubt. It wasn't even close. So, this got me thinking. And as I was pulling on my very imaginary beard, due to the fact I'm still yet to hit puberty, I come to a very stunning realization that the Eagles will have a Bran Stark on their team next year. And I'm talking about Jordan Howard. And I know this sounds a little bit weird, but the Eagles' red zone offense is absolutely terrifying. I mean, for context, we've got JJR Sega-Whiteside. Sega! Wow, my voice can hit that pitch. That was good. Okay, 6'3", 221 pounds. Zach Ertz, 6'5", 250. Dallas Goedert, 6'4", 260. Alshon Jeffrey, 6'3", 218. And gents, if you're listening to this and you're not even a little bit hot under the collar, this ain't the show for you, because that's a lot of height. I mean, let's add Liam into the mix. 6'3", 38-inch vertical, and just complete it, shall we? We might as well. But my point I'm making is that you can move those guys around. Let's not forget Mac Hollins, who also fits that mould as a tall receiver if healthy. That is a potential option. So you've got a lot of guys you can move around. We could see sets of Goddard and Ertz bunched together one side, Arcega-Whiteside and Jeffrey bunched together the other, and that would cause defenses fits. Now, everyone's predicting that the red zone offense, that over the last couple of years, if you're to go back and look at the stats, it's been very productive for the Eagles. There's no doubting it, that since Doug Pederson has come in, the red zone scoring percentage has been incredible. I mean, if we look at 2017, the Eagles were second in the league at 64%, or 62%, I beg your pardon. And last year, that went down to 59, so it took a bit of a drop there. In the last 3 games, it went up. It was, I think, 70-ish, around that sort of range. But now we're going to see a big jump once more. But I was positioned something earlier. It wasn't quite a thank you next. It was moving on from it. And they're asking who the biggest beneficiary of that would be. And it is not Brienne of Tarth. It is not Tyrion Lannister. It is not Sansa and a gorgeous hair. Or Arya and a badass little knife. Or anyone. It's none of the main protagonists. It's Bran Stark. It's Jordan Howard. And you're going, Liam, wait. What are you talking about this? How can you be so certain that Jordan Howard is going to be this monster inside the red zone? Let's condense this down a minute, okay? Inside the 20 last year for the Chicago Bears in that Matt Nagy offense, which as we know bears many a similarity to what Doug Pederson runs. They're both from the Andy Reid coaching tree, of course. Howard ran the ball 35 times for 9 touchdowns. Now, for context, okay, the entire Eagles backfield Do you want to have a guess how many times they rushed in the red zone? And how many touchdowns? 60 red zone rushes. 60 and 10 touchdowns. The entire backfield. That's Adams, Ajayi, Smallwood, Clement. All of them combined, to put together, added up, 60 times 10 touchdowns. Jordan Howard, 35 on his own, 9 touchdowns on his own. Now, if we take into account Ajayi's no longer here, let's rip him out of this equation. Josh Adams is buried on the depth chart at this point. Corey Clement's got a lot to prove, and Wendell Small, no. So that leaves Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard as the backfield guys. Now, if you are stacked up at the goal line, and you've got Osega Whiteside, Alshon Jeffrey, Dallas Goedert and Zach, you're going to run a nickel set. You're going to run a lighter defense. You're going to take a linebacker out of that box and match him on a tight end, because how the hell are you going to defend the red zone otherwise? If you're at the 8-yard line, what are you going to do? So Jordan Howard, who runs out of the shotgun last year, averaging 4.3 yards per carry against a lighter box in the red zone, it would not surprise me. If you're going to put a bet now on which Eagles player is going to have the most red zone touchdowns at the end of next year, I would lump on Jordan Howard. Like, yeah, I know Zach Ertz and Jeffrey and Sager and they're all going to be, fighting for scraps and the security blankets over the middle and whatever, but I would very, very comfortably put money on it being Jordan Howard. Now, under center, he runs 3.1 yards per carry. You're not going to run play action at the line of scrimmage. You're not going to run from under center at the line of scrimmage inside the red zone. To make it even worse, he did this despite having the 26th ranked run blocking efficiency that year, right? Smallwood and Adams, in that same vein, had the 11th and 5th best blocking efficiency on their runs, respectively. So you go from Jordan Howard, who scored 9 touchdowns on 35 attempts, behind a 26th ranked run blocking efficient line, to Smallwood and Adams, who rushed for a combined, let me work this out on the fly, 33 rushes and scored 5 between them, with the 11th and 5th best run blocking efficient lines. If you want to go further, let's talk about Jordan Howard as a receiver, because everyone seems to bring that up, that it's this massively, massively overplayed angle, I think, by a lot of people who either cover the team or fans that watch one game. Howard did have troubles with drops early in his career. He led the league in that category in 2016, and he did tally another 6 in 2017. It wasn't exactly like he was, drop-free. But in 2018, he had 1 drop on 27 targets. He caught 74% of his passes. Josh Adams dropped 2 on 13. Smallwood dropped 3 on 35. I don't know what else you can say here. Because if you want to stack the box and defend Jordan Howard in the red zone instead, who's to say he's not going to sneak through as a check down option on the edge of the red zone, or end zone even? I genuinely think that this red zone offense is going to benefit Jordan Howard more than anyone thinks. Miles Sanders is kind of the same, but, we can't call Miles Sanders Brand Stark. He was drafted high, right? Everyone expects the main protagonists here. Brand Stark, no one saw coming. And he's just going to rule the Seven Kingdoms now, and everyone's like, oh, okay, cool. So that's my hot take for this week. I don't know if you can even bet on a market that is, red zone touchdowns, but if you're going to, stick it on Jordan Howard. Because I think that all the signs are pointing towards lighter boxes inside the red zone. And if they're heavier boxes, it'll benefit other people, but I just think the man's going to absolutely demolish everything in front of him. And now there is pressure of Miles Sanders, a 2nd round pick behind, that he's going to be contesting for snap counts. There is going to be that added breathing over your shoulder sort of mentality. Howard's going to run even harder. And the man is a human bowling ball. So don't write that off. I genuinely think Jordan Howard could lead the Eagles in red zone touchdowns this year. But let me know what you think, guys. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you leave a comment after every little segment. Let me know if you agree, disagree, hate me. The best comment I had last week was that they love the content, but my English accent and football go together like cereal and brake fluid. Now, I'm not disagreeing, but I did have strawberry milkshake flavoured cereal, and that was pretty good. And I didn't think that would be. So maybe brake fluid isn't the worst tasting thing in the world. Maybe he should try it. I don't know. I'm not condoning it, but I don't even know. Is brake fluid a thing, or is that just oil? Who knows? Anyway, guys, make sure, again, you leave a like, you hit subscribe, you do all of that good stuff. We're going to get onto your favourite part of the show. It's a slightly shorter episode, only an itsy bitsy bit this week, just because of the nature of it. Before we do, though, because obviously all these questions are on Twitter, I know a lot of you are like, yo, Liam, where have you been? Your Twitter has disappeared. Well, the simple answer is, it got suspended. If you've not listened to this show in a week or two, Liam Jenkins 21, we're holding a funeral for it in a couple of days. Essentially a video of me recording my Mac showing a film room, had audio in the background playing from my speaker that I was listening to while editing, and they copyrighted it and the account's gone. So I've had to start the entire Twitter brand again, which is really annoying. So if you could leave a follow at Liam Jenkins PSN, that would be honestly amazing. It would really, really mean a lot, because that's the best way I get my content out there. You can stay up to date with everything and all of that. And I've missed all my friends as well, like, you know, I mean, ESP was meant to be wingmanning me, and I've had to, you know, get back on the graft and get him back into the DMs. So when I get out to Philly, that's happening, probably. Anyway, we're going to move on to a couple of thank you next questions. I've really got to scroll through these mentions now, because I've come at different times. People have started using the hashtag thank you next as well. And we're going to start off with our competition winner, the first ever winner of Eagles Blockbusters. Will Roberts says, who would you start the Eagles secondary next season based on OTAs? That's tricky, because I think obviously right now we've got Darby and Mills who are both out of the equation, so you're kind of only left with the scraps. But even if you are, I can see moving forward, my other hot take would be Jalen Mills won't be starting next year. I think that Jim Schwartz has almost had a change of heart when it comes to Rasul Douglas, and now he's bulked out like the Incredible Hulk. Maybe he's giving Jim the old intimidation, and Jim's having to rethink his strategy, because Rasul is a meaty man who's going to punch a hole in a wall. But I think that given the way he ended last season, that he got in there in a pinch, performed better than I think anyone probably gave him credit for or expected, that Rasul Douglas has to be a shoo-in. Like, he absolutely has to be. So I would start CB1, probably still Ronald Darby, CB2 Rasul Douglas, Jones in the nickel, Maddox at safety alongside Rodney McLeod, and we're going to cut Sendejo, we're going to get the 4th round pick, and then we're probably going to flip that at some point for someone else, presumably. But that would be the way I would do it. I think as of right now, the Eagles have Jalen Mills in his contract year. That's fine. That's absolutely fine if you want to get him on the field. But in doing so, you're going to be stagnating the growth of guys who are contracted past that. And if you don't intend on bringing him back, or you think there's a doubt in your mind already, there has to kind of be this backup plan, right? Because if you're going to let talents like Maddox, like Douglas just sit there and rot, you're only doing yourself a disservice. So it would not surprise me if during the course of training camp, if during OTAs, we see Rasul Douglas ball out and maybe, just maybe in pre-season, snatch away that CB2 starting spot. It would not be a shock to me in the slightest. Our next question comes from Volker JD, who, as we all know, has become almost like there is a power ranking of number one fans, and Volker JD is certainly toward the top, which is amazing to see. So he says, thank you next. Who has been the most impressive player to you during OTAs, and what do you think of Schwartz's comments on adding D-line talent? That is a great question. I think that from what I've seen at OTAs, what I mean is what's been streamed and the clips that have come out, and obviously scouring just about every beat reporter's timeline and seeing what they're saying. I've been very impressed with Hassan Ridgeway. I think there's a film room coming, hopefully either tomorrow, if you listen to this on Friday, if not it won't be, or early next week, just breaking down his play and how he can help the Eagles. But I think there are other guys, especially at cornerback, who are going to make shocks. Like I mentioned Rasul Douglas just then. I can see this being a really competitive training camp moving forward at the majority of positions. From what I understand so far, I think the offensive line situation's one to monitor, and a massively underrated battle that everyone's going to overlook until it presents itself blowing through your door like a hurricane. Probably shouldn't have used that term given the tornado warnings. I think that Halapulavati Vaitai versus Stefan Wisniewski at right guard. There seem to be cross-training Vaitai at the interior guard position at the moment, and that may well save his career. We don't know what the future holds for him right now. He's in his contract year. He's watched Isaac Seumalo get a contract extension. So it's really tricky to kind of put your finger on what's going on. But I think that if we're looking at that right guard spot, knowing that Brandon Brooks may miss time, having someone like Halapoulivaati Vaihto, who's got that bigger frame, I think he's like 6'5", 350 off the top of my head, move inside, maybe battle Wisniewski, we could see one of those guys take the fall come training camp. And a lot of people don't like that. They've said in YouTube video, like recently I did the 53-man roster prediction, that Stefan Wisniewski is almost a shoe-in to make that roster because he won the Super Bowl, and that's fine. But A, so did Vaihto, and B, I don't recall Vaihto being benched for the bizarrest of reasons. It was like my Twitter account being suspended, but if it was an offensive lineman. So, it's really hard to say, but they like Matt Pryor, they like Dillard, obviously, he's a first-round pick, and obviously you've got Jordan Mailata as well, so there's a lot of pieces of cake to go around, and I don't think there's enough for everyone. So my main observation so far has been, don't be surprised if a big O-lineman name takes a drop come August or September. Outside of that, I think in terms of what Jim Schwartz said about the D-line comments, and more importantly the acquisition, certainly wouldn't be surprised if there's more. My ears perked up, because I think he was even forecasting that the team aren't done yet and there's going to be more acquisition. Now, I think there's already a lot of pieces of pie to go around, for the sake of that same analogy, with Timmy Jernigan, Malik Jackson, then you've got Trayvon Hester and Bruce Hector. Obviously my off-season crush, I should say, is Anthony Rush out of UAB. I think he's going to be a really pivotal name to watch. So I don't know if there's going to be any more, but certainly maybe at defensive end, maybe even at a couple of other spots. But it seems that Schwartz is not so much discontent, but he's anticipating that the team aren't finished yet, which is, given off recent history and looking at the trades that happened much closer to the start of the regular season, certainly a wise path to take. Thank you. Next, at Mike Marriage says, you see what I did there? I tried to even go up a tone. Said, if you could pick any head coach to start your franchise, would you choose Doug? The obvious answer is Belichick, but you have to factor in that it's probably 2-3 years before retiring. I don't think Belichick's being thrown out until literally Robert Kraft pins him by the ear, takes him to some dodgy massage parlour, and then coaxes him into retirement. That's the only way I can see this happening. I think Robert Kraft there's a bit of a rivalry there between him and Belichick, from what I've heard, where Belichick just wants to go on his terms. And the most interesting thing I heard, I know this is unrelated, but someone close to that scenario told me that there was almost like a brief phase where they wanted Belichick to kind of leave and that era to end, and they were going to start grooming Tom Brady's replacement. So it was the same offseason where the team got rid of Jacoby Brissett. They almost like gutted the entire quarterback room, made all these crazy moves like on a hunch, because Belichick was like, well, okay, if I go after this year, there's nothing. Like, you are not starting with anything. You get a 41-year-old quarterback and you get nothing else. And that, to me, was Belichick in a nutshell. I was like, he wins on his terms. If he doesn't like it, he's going. He will damn that team so that they miss him. And I love that. So that was that big Belichick energy that I found really interesting. And on a completely different note, and back to your original question, I don't know if I'd choose Doug Pederson. I really like Pete Carroll as a head coach. I mean, it certainly would not be Mike Tomlin, put it that way. I think Pete Carroll is a very similar type of coach, that's similar to Doug Pederson, and it's very culture-driven. The way he's able to sustain success is interesting. I'd certainly put him above a name like Ron Rivera, who, although he's been 9 years into this Carolina role, it's been up and down, isn't it? It's hardly like they've found a solid base here. Pederson would be in my first few choices, but given it's only been a few years, and his first year into the team, he inherited a rookie franchise quarterback, a stout defense, a very good general manager. Not saying that I'd love to see what he does in an adverse scenario, but he's had some good cards played to him. Now, yes, he's had to coach that team through injuries. He's had to go through the most ridiculous senses of adversity, where losing the entire secondary and things like that. But so do many coaches in the league, and although maybe not extreme, that was a great call for Doug Pederson, a great rally cry to say, look, this guy is one of the best head coaches in the NFL. You can totally make that argument. But I think if we saw him, let's say, take over the New York Giants instead. Let's say the Eagles took over Adam Gase back in that coaching window, and it was Doug Pederson who went to Miami. Would we still be in a Super Bowl? That's the question you've got to ask yourself. If Adam Gase had Carson Wentz and all these players, and then they went on that run, would it be Adam Gase taking them there, or would this team not? That's where I think you've got to look at this coaching argument. So it's really tough to say, would I choose Doug to lead a team? He's got everything you want, but if I had the choice of every coach in the NFL, it would be top 3. I would put Pete Carroll maybe under Belichick, probably Pederson 3rd. 4th or 5th, again, really hard to say. McVay is in top 5 though, so don't worry. I'd hope this hasn't, triggered anybody. It's just, I think, very interesting to look at this, because it's really difficult to rank coaches against each other, and it's almost, so simple for someone to go on a tier-making website and go, these coaches are elite, these quarterbacks are great, these quarterbacks haven't proven. But there are so many subjective arguments that you've got to take into account. It's like if you're going to rank your ex-girlfriends, and if you had to pick all of your ex-girlfriends, which one would you go back to? Like, do you go for the hottest one? Do you go for the one that was least stressed? Do you go where the boom boom was good? What do you do what I mean? Like, it's so difficult because they've all got pros and cons, and there were plenty of cons in my case. So it's either way, that team is getting absolutely gutted and train wrecked. So it's really tricky. I think Doug Pederson would certainly be top 3. I wouldn't pick him over Belichick just yet because that culture's so strong. And Pete Carroll, off the top of my head, would be the only other coach I would select. So it would be 3rd place, which isn't too bad in the slightest, really. But I think that's just about all we've had for the questions today. Again, if you do want to get your questions submitted for Thank You Next, please tweet me at Liam Jenkins PSN, not 21, that's gone now, funeral unfortunately. But at Liam Jenkins PSN is the place to go. Now, we've got just about time for a couple more whips around the Eagles news area before we draw the curtains on a relatively quieter episode. Although I think this has been one of the funnest to film. I say film like there's a camera, there's really not. The other big news, I'd say news in a very loose word, but Louis Riddick, obviously now with ESPN after a really solid NFL career, came out and said that he thinks Carson Wentz will be MVP. And this has caused a bulk of bizarre discussions, which somehow link back to Dak Prescott again, which is absolutely dumbfounding, because I can't ever recall Dak Prescott being in any logical MVP conversation. But will Carson Wentz win MVP? You can't say definitively yes or no, but you can certainly make the argument that he's going to. And I'm going to put it down to these 5 reasons. Number 1, offensive coordinator. We saw Mike Groh first season as offensive coordinator. I feel like I harp on about this every single podcast, so if you've heard this before, skip forward 30 seconds, where he came in, Nick Foles was still the starter after winning the Super Bowl. From week 14 all the way through to week 3, it was the Nick Foles offense with Nick Foles at quarterback, where the players are on Nick's timing and his cadence and chemistry and blah, 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 blah. Then he finally gets Carson Wentz back and he's still hampered by injury. So I don't think you can give Mike Groh that much criticism. And the Golden Tate thing, again, I don't care how many times I've got to go back through this, but it is not his fault that it's difficult to implement Golden Tate at a trade deadline where you already have 3 slot receivers. That's difficult for anyone. The guy was being honest and got absolutely crucified for it. He's genuinely got every bit of leverage he needs to say, yeah, it is difficult, and what? Because it was a crazy short-term move. I think it was a panic trigger pull to try and make sure they can get the team over the line that were beginning to falter at that point. It's tough. I think you look back at some of the most infamous trades. I always reference Randy Moss, one of the greatest to ever do it. Trade deadline, goes back home, doesn't do anything. We saw the gorgeous Cowboys trade deadline move for a wide receiver, which did absolutely nothing. It doesn't happen. Not every move at the deadline is Amari Cooper. That's so rare to find. And even when it is, they're just making him go routes and say, Amari, do what you want because you're such a finesse route runner. So that's not fair on him. Anyway, Mike Groh now comes into a situation where he's working in a full off season with a healthy Carson Wentz, where they can get on the same page and make it Carson's offense again. Reason number 2, you look at that red zone offense, you look at Wentz's numbers down in the red zone, you look at Wentz's records where he's thrown touchdowns without interceptions or passes without picks. The guy is a completion machine. He understands leverage. He can read and manipulate safeties when he's not kind of stuck on that back foot, and I don't think we'll see that again moving into 2019. So just the red zone offense alone, and knowing that Wentz can get out and scramble, absolutely, it would not surprise me if he surpasses those 2017 numbers by quite some way, and maybe even in what is a very offensively driven league, gains very close towards what Patrick Mahomes put it. Now, number 3 is the argument that You look at the other quarterbacks in the league, and you can see that Aaron Rodgers has a new offense, and Tom Brady's still getting old, and Pat Mahomes, the league's going to catch up. I think you can make the case that if any quarterback from that draft class of Wentz, Goff, Prescott, Watson, that the league has caught up to Dak Prescott very quickly. The league caught up to Deshaun Watson quite quickly. It hasn't to Carson Wentz. Even when he is unable to play at his best, the guy is still setting career highs in completion percentages. So will the league catch up to Patrick Mahomes? Is a bit more... I don't want to say he's a bit more talented. It's a very different skill set. I mean, he's a more explosive quarterback, I would say, Patrick Mahomes. He's more show-stopping and breathtaking, but Carson Wentz will get the job done. And then there's the whole fourth quarter comeback argument. You can go into these all day long, but it all comes down to the fact that Carson Wentz, going into what is still very much a prove-it year for him, has a lot of naysayers, has a lot of criticisms about his character, no longer has that dark cloud, whether he liked it or not, that was Nick Foles, and what Nick Foles could do in the playoffs kind of hanging over him a bit. Like, Nick Foles comes in when Wentz is injured and suddenly lifts the offense to a level that we didn't see. So that's always going to hang over you. Like, no matter what line of work you're in, you then take that away, you give him an off-season with his offensive coordinator, you give him a strong, balanced run game where he's not throwing 45 times a game, which Nick Foles never had to do. So that's something else working in Wentz's favour. You then give him a complimentary receiver in the name of JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and I think that on top of Goddard and Ertz and a very tremendous offensive line, which has all 5 cogs back from the Super Bowl winning campaign, I'm not saying he'll definitively win it. I'm saying you can certainly make the argument that Carson Wentz will be a favourite. If you're going to rank top 3 right now for MVP, he's in there with Patrick Mahomes. Maybe Aaron Rodgers? I don't know. That would be a name I'm looking at right now, given that he seems to be happy and poking up in Game of Thrones, so that happens. But we're going to end it there. I think that's a strong note to end it on, that Carson Wentz could become MVP. The only other thing we've got to touch on is Jeffrey Lurie saying he shouldn't have, or that giving Chip Kelly personnel control was a mistake. And that's literally like saying getting into a relationship with a toxic ex was a mistake. That is, I don't know how that became a national story. I don't know why that quote became a thing. That's just great. Thanks for that insight. Captain Obvious. Brilliant. Anyway, guys, the last thing we will touch on, again, if you haven't entered the competition, if you didn't get a chance the first time round, Eagles blockbusters, your clues for this week are, number 1, when will my child get in the car? When will my child get in the car? Number 2, excuse me, I'm looking for a town in England called Barnet. Can you direct me? Excuse me, I'm looking for a town in England called Barnet. Can you direct me? And number 3, oi, you're down at someone in a club last night. How hard? I don't know. You'll have to ask him. Oi, you're down at someone in a club last night. How hard? Don't know. You'll have to ask him. That is all from myself, Liam Jenkins. Guys, don't forget, you can subscribe to this podcast on all good platforms, but if you could leave a little 5-star review on iTunes, that would be amazing. Follow me on Twitter at LiamJenkinsPSN. Tweet me, email me, do whatever you got to do. It's phillysportsnetwork@gmail.com to get those entries in for this week's Eagles Rockbusters. I will see you next time for whatever comes next on this, podcasting journey. Maybe you read an article, maybe it's a video, maybe it's a podcast. But regardless, I'll see you soon. Have a good weekend.